Hello everyone, I'm François Picard. He'll have served 90 days as French Prime Minister. Michel Barnier tendering his resignation after a record-short stint as head of a post-war government in France. This on the heels of Wednesday's vote of no confidence in Parliament. The combined forces of the far right and the left rejecting the first item of next year's budget, which brings us now to the presidential palace. France 24 senior correspondent James Andre is there. James, the president to speak in less than 2 hours.
Yes, absolutely. The president will be speaking, and if he does announce a prime minister, it will be the first time a president announces the name of the prime minister on prime time television since 1993. Back in the day, it was François Mitterrand announcing that the new prime minister would be Édouard Balladur. So that's indeed history in the making if he does. But for now, we have no clue as to know if indeed Emmanuel Macron has chosen anybody or found a solution to the extremely complex political equation he is facing here in Paris. What we do know, though, is that he spent his day in consulting the heads of the various political forces here in France, that he met earlier on today with Yael Braun-Pivet. She's the head of the parliament, the president of the French parliament. He met also with Gérard Larcher, that's the president of the Senate. We know that he had lunch with François Bayrou, who is the head of the Modem centrist party, one of his allies and his former justice minister. And so indeed a lot of consulting, a lot of politics taking place behind closed doors behind us. Very little information filtering. What we are hearing, though, and that is rather through local media outlets here in France, is that indeed Emmanuel Macron was in a sense surprised by what happened in Parliament yesterday. Also, we're hearing that there's a lot of frustration in the ministries, where indeed some councillors are clearing their desks and saying that they feel extremely frustrated with this short-lived government, that they feel that the National Rally has just seized an opportunity for itself in the face of judicial problems, and that indeed all this is a great shame. So those were the words of those councillors in the ministries here. But when it comes to who will be the next Prime Minister, everybody is holding its breath and waiting to see.
Yeah, because James, the elections happened on July 7th. It took Emmanuel Macron nearly 2 months to name Michel Barnier. You're stating that there is a chance, we don't know how big a chance, but a chance that Macron will announce a successor immediately.
Now, that can totally happen. I mean, the constitution in France states that basically the president can take as much time or as little as he wants to find a new prime minister. So it could be 2 months and it could be in 10 minutes. Nobody knows. What we do know, though, is that indeed Emmanuel Macron, this has been said by people from the Élysée Palace, would like to find a swift solution, simply because, as you know, this weekend there's a very important political moment here in France. Around 50 heads of state will be visiting the capital for the inauguration of Notre Dame of Paris. Also, President-elect Donald Trump is awaited here. And obviously for the president, it would be difficult, or at least it would look or be interpreted as a sign of, destabilization of France, if there were no government indeed at that precise moment. So there's that, and then there's also financial pressure from the financial markets. I mean, as you know, indeed, the whole financial world are watching to see what will happen in France, because of course this could have severe impact when it comes to the European economy and the Eurozone. So yes, there are many good reasons to try and find a prime minister rapidly. The thing is, he has to find a good one who can actually withstand some time and be a credible prime minister that can actually govern the country, because there's a lot at hand right now, and that includes the budget of the French state, which is up for votes and needs to be solved fairly rapidly, or indeed there will be problems. No shutdown, but problems.
Problems indeed. James Andre reporting live outside the Élysée Palace, awaiting Emmanuel Macron's address, which we will, of course, be carrying live for you at 8 p.m. local time. That's in less than 2 hours. A special edition right here on France 24. With us is politics editor Mark Perlman. Mark, a lot to unpack in what James has been reporting. First of all, those local media outlets reporting that Emmanuel Macron's surprised at the vote of no confidence that we saw on Wednesday, do you lend credence to that he would actually be surprised? I mean, that's all people have been talking about for the last weeks.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he was surprised, or I'd be very worried if he was surprised, because the writing was on the wall for several days now, actually several weeks. We knew Michel Barnier was skating on very thin ice, and we knew that the left had always said, we'll table a motion of no confidence anytime, and they were just waiting for the moment when Marine Le Pen would say, okay, I'm in. Because once she said, I'm in, they had the numbers at the National Assembly. We saw them yesterday. It was not even close. They needed 288 votes. They got 331 votes. And nearly all the MPs from both the National Rally and the leftist coalition cast their ballots to push Michel Barnier out. So Emmanuel Macron knew this was coming. He might be upset, but he might be upset at himself for calling those snap elections 6 months ago that turned out to be inconclusive and largely explained the situation we're in.
And because you cannot call constitutionally another round of snap elections until next summer. So he's got several options. A government of technocrats, people don't really believe that's going to happen. So what can he do? He can go for another conservative. Michel Barnier was from the former Gaullist party. He could try to reach out to the left, or he could double down with an ally from his center bloc. We heard James Andre mentioning his biggest ally from the center, François Picard.
Right. So those are the options. What he needs to do is find a more stable majority, or if not an outright majority, in Parliament. Michel Barnier didn't have enough support. He has to enlarge it. So this means you only have two ways to do this, actually three, as you just mentioned. One, you make an implicit alliance with the National Rally, meaning you make sure they don't vote against you. That's what Michel Barnier had hoped for, but it didn't last very long. So a name bandied around for each reshuffle, and we've had more and more reshuffle.
So let me just interrupt you on this. The outgoing interior minister, he's been very tough law and order guy, Bruno Retailleau.
Bruno Retailleau, probably too much to the right, but a name that's been out there and that's been out there for several reshuffles now is the defense minister, Sébastien Lecornu. He has the advantage of coming from the right, but having been an early ally of Emmanuel Macron back in 2017. He was a rather junior minister. He played a big role in this kind of roving debate that Emmanuel Macron decided after the Yellow Vest movement. And Sébastien Lecornu was very helpful in that time. He probably saved Emmanuel Macron's skin at the time. And so he's a faithful of Macron. He comes from the right. He also has a fairly good relationship with the National Rally. Our colleagues from Libération newspaper reported that he actually had a dinner not so long ago with Marine Le Pen. This doesn't mean that he's an ally, but he is not a red line for Marine Le Pen. So this could work with the National Rally, but obviously it's the same problem as Michel Barnier. Marine Le Pen could decide, I like him for a few weeks, but if I don't like him, thumbs down, he's out. So the other option would be to try to lure the Socialist Party and lure them away from the leftist alliance that they've stuck with until now. And so you could appoint a centrist like François Picard, who could appeal to the socialists because he's a centrist, and he could get support from the Macron camp, the conservative camp, and maybe the socialists. So enlarge a majority. He could be a consensus candidate, or Macron could decide on the last socialist prime minister of François Hollande, Bernard Cazeneuve. His name was also in the running when Michel Barnier was appointed. He broke with the Socialist Party. So the Socialist Party said last time around, he's a traitor, we don't want him. But now it's a different context. The socialists have let it be known that they're ready to sit down, to discuss, and try to be more creative.
Try to be more creative, but they're going to want a concession. Otherwise, why would they enter government? So
Exactly.
Would that be rolling back the pension reform?
That's the problem. If you enlarge the majority, how can you build a coherent program? And yeah, you just mentioned the pension reform. The socialists have said, we want it to be abrogated or at least thoroughly changed. The Macron camp said, no, this is one of our emblematic reforms. We're not going back. The Conservatives, no way, because they've always advocated for this reform, which pushed back the legal age of retirement from 62 to 64. So how do you agree on this? Well, you can finesse it, saying maybe we're going to look at some aspects and so on. But clearly, those are the only options for Emmanuel Macron. There is another option for him tonight. Last time he addressed the French, he took everyone by surprise, including us, when he announced those snap elections. Maybe he could come up with another idea instead of, okay, everyone expects a prime minister. Let's see. He is used to take his time. Maybe he could announce a referendum. Could be on immigration or on other issues. Or, this is very unlikely, but I'll just throw it out. There is an article in the Constitution, Article 16, that gives exceptional powers to the president, essentially all executive and legislative power. For this, you need to have, I quote the Constitution, a grave and immediate threat to the public institution.
The last time it was when there was a coup attempt in Algeria in 1961.
The one and only time. There was an actual coup attempt in Algeria. Algeria was still French at that time, and this was under Charles de Gaulle. The circumstances are totally different. It's hard to see Emmanuel Macron invoking Article 16 by saying we're going into a financial crisis, a regime crisis, so exceptionally I'll make sure I'll pass the budget, and this will only be a temporary measure. I really don't think he's going to do this, because you can only imagine what the reactions would be on the political scene and even on the streets. But you never know. That we've heard many unprecedented stuff happening.
Certainly,
here, so
people watching us late in South Korea will say you never know after what happened there this week. Let's cross to London now, and he's a biographer of General de Gaulle, Julian Jackson, Professor Emeritus at Queen's Mary University of London. Your latest book, France on Trial, The Case of Marshal Pétain. Marshal Pétain, who was the collaborator leader of France during World War II. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
It's a pleasure.
First question for you. Here we are talking about Article 16 of the Constitution. What are your thoughts when you hear this talk?
Well, I agree with your last speaker that it would be that it's almost inconceivable that President Macron would use that article. It was created by de Gaulle in the Constitution, especially for extreme crises. He had in his mind actually 1940, when he was in the government and the government collapsed, and he wanted a sense that in an absolute moment of crisis, a president could take emergency powers. And as your last speaker said, that last time, the only time it's been used was Algeria, and when there was a putsch, and in April 1961. And it was actually very controversial because he continued to use those powers right from April to September, which was probably pushing it a bit and unconstitutional. So the only thing I would say is, though, that it's almost inconceivable, but President Macron is capable, as we saw with the dissolution, of doing the strangest things. And he seems to be completely unpredictable and to live increasingly disconnected from reality, but I don't think it's likely to happen. And I just wanted to make one point, because people are mentioning again and again, quite rightly, the only time that a vote of censure has taken place successfully under the Fifth Republic, and that was in 1962. And that was because de Gaulle had tried to wanted to revise the Constitution to allow the president to be elected by universal suffrage, by popular vote, instead of by kind of electoral college. And this was considered a kind of a Bonapartist, Napoleonic thing, and so the whole political class was against it. So de Gaulle said, well, I'm going to do it anyway. Parliament voted against it, and he dissolved Parliament. The difference there was that in 1962, he was able to dissolve Parliament because he hadn't used up that card, which Macron's already used up this time, and he can't dissolve Parliament until a year's elapsed. And secondly, in 62, de Gaulle was an extraordinarily popular figure. he could really appeal to the people over the head of parliament.
Yeah, and he got a whopping majority after that.
He did, and remember that he'd only just escaped in August 1962 from a remarkable escape from an assassination attempt by the sort of extreme pro-Algérie Française people. So there was a great wave of sympathy. He was a great hero. He got the French out of Algeria and so on. Macron is at the moment, as a result of the extraordinary decision to dissolve Parliament, deeply unpopular, and so he neither has the capacity to dissolve, nor, even if he did, does he have any kind of moral, political credibility. And on the question of resignation, some people have said, well, would he resign? I think, again, anything is possible with him, but I think it's very, very, very unlikely. He doesn't strike me as a resigning type. And that makes one think of another constitutional precedent, which was the last time a president sort of resigned in such circumstances was 1877. Different constitution. There was a conservative president. He was faced with a left-wing parliament. He tried to appoint a right-wing government, and there was an outcry, and the slogan was "sous se mettre ou sous démettre," to give in or resign. And he gave in, and then he resigned. And when Mitterrand found himself in 1986 with a parliament that was not that was actually of a different political hue than he was, there was also talk, should he resign? And what Mitterrand did, of course, was to cohabit.
Yeah,
But the difference now is, what can Macron cohabit with? There's nothing to cohabit with, because there's a parliament which is completely divided between three almost equal blocks, centre, left and right.
Yeah, Mitterrand not the resigning type either. Julian Jackson,
No.
let me ask you, because in your biography of de Gaulle, he forges this constitution with a very strong executive power. One of the reasons Macron probably won't resign is because he doesn't have to under the current constitution. But de Gaulle grew up under the Third Republic, and so knew all about coalition building. Mark Proman's been telling us about how difficult it's proving with a hung parliament to make alliances. Are the French, in your view, rediscovering coalitions, or are they just simply biding their time until next summer when they can have another snap election?
Well, if I could give you another precedent, then let's go to the previous republic. That's the Fourth Republic, which was rather similar to the Third, where you had a very weak president and a very a parliament could do more or less what it wanted. 1951, there were elections which produced basically 6 equal groups in parliament, which simply could not agree, because no one group could form a majority. And the two extremes, one of which was de Gaulle, refused to work with the centre. And eventually led to paralysis, and governments came and went with tremendous rapidity and so on. So it takes, and eventually government was formed, but in the Fifth Republic, that habit, in a sense, has, to the extent that it worked, to the extent that it worked in the Fourth Republic, and indeed it didn't work that well because there was amazing political instability. To the extent that it did work, it's obviously a habit that the French have now got out of, and at the moment it's impossible to see how the three blocks that currently in the French Parliament could form a stable coalition of any kind. I think Macron...
And yet, Julian Jackson, the country's running. The stock market today is not even down; it's up slightly. And there's a civil servant strike that's taking place this Thursday. But the country's running. And is there the sense that in France we talk about electoral politics, but the people who keep the country running are the high civil service, are the state superintendents?
Well, remember the Belgians. I can't remember. They were without a government for almost a year, I think. I mean, things will go on. The sky hasn't fallen on the head. There will be some kind of. They'll get some kind of caretaker, sort of temporary budget will be voted and so on. Yes, certainly that's all true. Life does go on. But what is really critical is that this is such an important moment for the world that France, that Europe, faced with a Trump election, should be showing itself in a sense, to be able to not speak with a united voice, but that what had really been what had made Europe work, which was the Franco-German alliance, is now in trouble both because of the Germans and because of the French. So I think for the world, there is this going to be this European vacuum at a terribly important moment. So yes, okay, life goes on. People go on to their jobs. The sky hasn't fallen on our heads, despite what Barnier said. But nonetheless, I think it is a really critical moment for Europe and for France that there is this kind of vacuum.
Julian Jackson, so many thanks for speaking with us from London.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Julian Jackson mentioning at this critical juncture to be this crisis of leadership here in France. Of course, that brings us to Saturday and the optics when we'll see the French president with the U.S. president-elect at the Notre Dame ceremony, Mark Broman.
Yes, absolutely. This was unexpected, but this is what we're going to see. So we could argue that it's a success for Macron to be able to bring Donald Trump to Paris for his first trip as president-elect outside the United States for a ceremony about Notre Dame and so on. The problem is that he cannot even enjoy it because he's faced with this choice of a prime minister that's been so difficult for him in the past when he had an absolute majority. It was difficult when he had a relative majority, and now that he has no majority at all, it's proving to be really a pain in the neck. And so he wants to be seen probably on Saturday welcoming Donald Trump with a new prime minister, because the other option is that Michel Barnier would still be the caretaker prime minister, because if Emmanuel Macron doesn't appoint one, this would be the situation. He could still, that's why the assumption, but it's difficult to say he's going to appoint a prime minister because of the optics with Donald Trump. That would be a bit short in terms of an explanation. The French are certainly hoping that he's going to appoint a prime minister because this will be a prime minister who can last more than Michel Barnier, 3 months, 91 days, and who can really make sure a budget is passed, financial markets are reassured, Brussels is less worried, and the French know where they're heading to.
By the way, the French news agency in the last minutes quoting a source close to the president saying the name of the next prime minister will not be announced in that address to the nation. If it's not, what's Emmanuel Macron going to be saying in 90 minutes' time?
There could be a trick in what is reported. It could be before. There could be a statement by the Élysée Palace saying Emmanuel Macron is appointing X, Y, or Z to the prime minister. And then there were rumors today that this could come out this way, but it's a difficult. It's not easy to find the right prime minister because of all the calculations that need to be made before, hoping that this time it will pan out. He cannot make a second mistake. Michel Barnier, he won't like it, but he was clearly not the right person at the right time, at the right place. And so Emmanuel Macron knows that he's more and more unpopular. The leaders of the far left, clearly, and the leader of the far right as well, are calling for his head to roll. Jean-Luc Mélenchon wants Emmanuel Macron to resign. Marine Le Pen wants Emmanuel Macron to resign. Why? They want an early presidential election. Why? Mélenchon thinks he can win. Marine Le Pen has legal troubles, and she wants to avoid them because she could be ruled to be unfit or incapable of running next time around because she has a legal case. So they want to hurry the political election. It's very unlikely Emmanuel Macron will make them such a favor, but the clock is ticking. This is why there's so much pressure on him. If it's not tonight because he didn't find the right solution, because yes, let's not forget, a prime minister is one thing. Then the prime minister has to form a government, and then the government has to essentially get a functioning majority, or at least a functioning minority in parliament, and that's not so easy to find in 24 hours.
Okay, so 90 minutes out, anybody's guess what the French president's going to say on state television. This is fueling the worry over in Brussels, where we can cross now to correspondent Dave Keating. We've lost the connection there with Brussels. We'll try to reconnect as quickly as possible and cross back over to Dave Keating. Mark Perlman, you'll be following that address live here on France 24. That's at 8 p.m. local time. Thanks for joining us for this special edition.